Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now. Stop what you are doing right now, because if you follow the Los Angeles Dodgers, if you care about the World Baseball Classic, or if you have even a passing interest in how the most expensive pitching staff ever assembled in the history of professional baseball is being managed heading into the 2026 season, then what we are about to unpack is going to have you leaning forward in your seat. There is something happening in the Dodgers camp right now that has not been fully explained to the public. A deal was made. An agreement was reached behind closed doors between Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the Dodgers organization, and Team Japan. A set of parameters, their word not mine, was negotiated and settled on before Yamamoto left the Cactus League to head home and represent his country in the World Baseball Classic. And here is the thing that is driving everyone in the baseball world absolutely crazy. Nobody is telling us the full details, not Yamamoto, not the Dodgers, not the Japanese Baseball Federation. There is a secret plan in place. There are guardrails that have been agreed upon, and all we have been given is a tantalizing sliver of information that raises far more questions than it answers. So today we are going to do what nobody else is doing. We are going to take every piece of publicly available information, every quote, every number, every piece of context about Yamamoto's spring training outings and his 2026 WBC schedule, and we are going to piece together exactly what this plan most likely involves, why it matters so much for both the Dodgers and Team Japan, and what the stakes are if anything goes sideways. This is the full story of the Yoshinobu Yamamoto situation, and trust me, it is a lot more interesting than a simple spring training roster update. Before we get into the current situation, let us establish exactly who Yoshinobu Yamamoto is and why every single decision about his arm and his workload is being tracked and analyzed with the intensity that most organizations reserve for their nuclear codes. Yamamoto is not just another pitcher. He is not just a good international signing who came over from Japan with solid credentials and a reasonable upside. He is, by virtually every meaningful measure, one of the most talented starting pitchers alive on the planet right now. When the Los Angeles Dodgers signed him prior to the 2024 season, they did so with a contract that set records and turned heads, even in a sport that has grown accustomed to astonishing financial commitments. The deal was worth $325 million over 12 years, the largest contract ever given to a pitcher in the history of professional baseball at the time of signing, and a statement of conviction about Yamamoto's talent that even the most conservative baseball executives could not dismiss. What had the Dodgers seen that justified that kind of investment? Everything, essentially. In Japan's NPB, Yamamoto was not merely dominant, he was generationally dominant. He won 3 consecutive pitching triple crowns, leading the league in wins, ERA, and strikeouts simultaneously for 3 straight seasons, a feat that had never been accomplished before in the history of professional baseball anywhere in the world. His control was surgical, his fastball was electric, his breaking ball repertoire was diverse and devastating. He had the kind of competitive presence on the mound that intimidates hitters before the first pitch is thrown, and the kind of mental makeup that allows him to be better in big moments than in ordinary ones. When the Dodgers signed him, they were not buying potential, they were buying the real thing, and they were prepared to pay an extraordinary premium to have it. His first season in Los Angeles confirmed that the investment was justified, even accounting for the natural adjustment period that comes with crossing the Pacific and adapting to a new league, new hitters, new stadiums, and a new professional culture. Yamamoto was excellent. His second year was even better. By the time 2026 spring training rolled around, he was firmly established as one of the 2 or 3 best pitchers in the National League, a legitimate ace in the truest sense of the word, and a cornerstone of a rotation that the Dodgers had constructed specifically around his abilities. This is the arm that is now at the center of a quiet, carefully negotiated arrangement that both sides are deliberately keeping vague. And that vagueness, that intentional, strategic vagueness, is what makes this story so fascinating. Let us walk through the timeline of what has actually happened in the public record, because the sequence of events here is genuinely interesting and reveals more than the individual quotes might suggest in isolation. The Dodgers opened their Cactus League schedule, and manager Dave Roberts initially communicated that Yamamoto's first Cactus League appearance was going to be his only appearance before he departed for Japan to join the Samurai Japan WBC roster. That was the plan as stated. That was what reporters were told and what the broader public understood to be the situation. One outing, then goodbye until the WBC is over. Then something changed. The Dodgers faced the Los Angeles Angels, and Yamamoto went out and threw 30 pitches over 1 2/3 innings. Normal enough for a pitcher in the early stages of his spring buildup, working on a specific pitch count and inning limit. Roberts came and got him, and based on the stated plan, that should have been that. Next stop, Tokyo. Instead, Yamamoto appeared against the San Francisco Giants the following week. 52 pitches over 3 innings, 3 runs allowed, a loss for the Dodgers. And it was as Yamamoto was being removed from that game, the game that was supposedly not supposed to happen at all based on the original public plan, that one of the more revealing and almost accidentally candid exchanges of the entire spring occurred. When Roberts came to the mound to take Yamamoto out of the Giants game, the manager told his ace, quote, "Good luck for the World Baseball Classic." That farewell, that send-off from manager to player, happened in full view of reporters and was subsequently reported and discussed. Roberts said good luck for the WBC. In the context of that exchange, the implication was clear. This is your last outing with us before you go. Except, and here is where it gets genuinely interesting, Yamamoto then told reporters, through his interpreter Yoshihiro Sonoda, that the farewell was premature. He has another game to pitch. One more outing, presumably with the Dodgers in Cactus League play, before he officially transitions fully into WBC preparation mode. The manager said goodbye. The pitcher said not yet. Both of them are operating according to the same agreed-upon parameters, but the right hand clearly did not fully know what the left hand was doing in that moment, which tells you something important about the nature of this arrangement. It is detailed, it is specific, but the communication around it is not perfectly synchronized, and there are elements of it that have not been fully internalized by everyone involved. So what do we actually know about the agreement? Yamamoto was fairly candid in acknowledging that an arrangement exists and that it involves specific parameters, but he declined to share the specifics. That word, parameters, is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this story. Parameters in the context of a World Baseball Classic workload agreement typically means things like pitch count limits per appearance, inning limits per game, number of appearances total, rest requirements between outings, and rules about whether the pitcher is available for bullpen appearances or only starts. These are the kinds of guardrails that teams and national federations negotiate to protect pitchers from overuse in a WBC context, where the competitive intensity can lead to decisions that prioritize winning a game over protecting a pitcher's long-term health and performance. The fact that the Dodgers insisted on these parameters at all is entirely understandable. $325 million of contractual commitment has a way of concentrating organizational focus on an athlete's physical well-being. The Dodgers are not going to allow their franchise cornerstone to go to the World Baseball Classic, pitch in 5 games across 3 weeks with minimal rest, accumulate a high workload in a high-intensity competitive environment, and then come back and be expected to take the ball every 5 days for a 6-month regular season, plus however many playoff rounds this version of the Dodgers is going to play through. They are also not going to forbid him from going. Yamamoto's participation with Samurai Japan is deeply important to him personally and culturally, and the organization understands and respects that. But they are absolutely going to ensure that his participation comes with guardrails that protect their significant investment. Based on what we know from the previous WBC cycle and from the information available about Yamamoto's spring training workload and schedule, we can make some reasonable inferences about what those parameters likely include. In the 2023 World Baseball Classic, Yamamoto was used in a relatively aggressive way that likely influenced how both he and the Dodgers approached negotiations this time around. He pitched 4 shutout innings against Australia in a starting role. Dominant, efficient, exactly what you want from your ace. Then he came out of the bullpen in relief of Roki Sasaki against Mexico in what became a much more complicated and stressful outing. He got through 3 scoreless innings initially, but then ran into trouble and allowed Mexico to take the lead, though he avoided the loss thanks to a dramatic walk-off hit from Munetaka Murakami. The point is that in 2023, Yamamoto made a start and a relief appearance and accumulated meaningful innings and pitches in a high-stakes competitive environment just months before beginning his final NPB season. This time the circumstances are different. He is 2 seasons into one of the richest contracts in baseball history. He is pitching for a franchise that is defending back-to-back World Series titles and has legitimate ambitions of a third. The cost-benefit analysis of WBC usage is different, and the parameters that were agreed upon almost certainly reflect that reality. It can be reasonably presumed, and multiple reporters covering this situation have suggested as much, that Yamamoto and the Dodgers agreed to rule out bullpen appearances entirely this time around. If he pitches for Japan, he pitches as a starter, with defined pitch count limits and with built-in rest requirements that ensure he is not overextended. That is the most logical structure for an agreement between a team protecting a major financial investment and a player who genuinely wants to contribute to his country's WBC campaign without either side having to sacrifice the other's interests entirely. Yamamoto's next scheduled appearance on the competitive stage is March 6th, when Samurai Japan is expected to open its World Baseball Classic campaign. Team Japan has been placed in Pool C for the 2026 tournament, which brings together a genuinely competitive group of baseball nations. Australia is in the pool, a team that has continued to develop and improve its international program over the years. Chinese Taipei is there, with a deep tradition of baseball passion and some legitimate talent at the international level. And then there is Korea, and in the context of Japan-Korea athletic competition, the word rivalry does not begin to capture the intensity of what these two nations bring to their matchups. Japan and Korea games in the WBC are not just baseball games, they are events. They generate electricity that most regular season Major League games cannot match, and when Yamamoto is on the mound, that electricity is amplified by the presence of one of the most compelling pitchers in the world, representing one of the sport's most successful international programs. Pool C games will be played at the Tokyo Dome from March 5 through March 10th, which means Yamamoto will be pitching on Japanese soil in front of Japanese fans as part of the most celebrated and successful international baseball program in the world. The 2023 WBC, which Japan won in spectacular fashion, culminating in Ohtani's iconic strikeout of Mike Trout to seal the title, created an extraordinary standard for what Samurai Japan can accomplish when they are at their best. The pressure to meet and exceed that standard will be enormous, and the national expectations that come with it are the kind of weight that only a very specific category of athlete is equipped to carry comfortably. Yamamoto is that kind of athlete. He has proven it. But managing his workload properly within the context of those expectations, when his country wants to use him as much as possible and his employer needs to protect him for a much longer journey, is the central tension of this whole situation. Here is something that is worth lingering on for a moment because it speaks to the complexity and the sophistication of how modern baseball handles these kinds of multi-party negotiations. The fact that there is a formal agreement with specific parameters, not just a general understanding, not just a handshake and a prayer, but actual agreed-upon terms between Yamamoto, the Dodgers, and the Japanese Baseball Federation, represents a kind of institutional maturity that the sport has developed in large part because of situations exactly like this one. The WBC has always created tension between national federations that want maximum access to the best players and major league franchises that are paying those players enormous salaries and accepting enormous financial risk on their physical health. Early WBCs saw real friction between these competing interests. Players were sometimes pushed harder than their teams were comfortable with. Injuries happened. Relationships between franchises and federations were strained. Over time, both sides have learned to negotiate more carefully and to build structures that protect everyone's interests while still preserving the competitive integrity of the tournament. The parameters that Yamamoto and the Dodgers agreed to are a product of that evolution, a sophisticated document, or at minimum a detailed verbal agreement that specifies exactly how Yamamoto will be used, what limits will be imposed, and what the expectations are on all sides. The fact that Yamamoto is willing to acknowledge publicly that such an agreement exists while declining to share the details is itself a kind of diplomatic masterpiece. He is being honest that there are constraints on his availability without revealing information that might give opponents tactical intelligence about his usage patterns or create public expectations that put pressure on him or Team Japan to deviate from the plan. That careful management of information, what to share, what to protect, what to acknowledge without elaborating, is part of what makes Yamamoto such a fascinating figure beyond his pitching ability. He is navigating simultaneously the interests of his employer, his country, his own performance goals, and the media and public attention that comes with being one of the most prominent and highly compensated athletes in the sport. He is doing it in a second language through an interpreter in a country and a baseball culture that is still somewhat foreign to him despite his growing comfort in the Los Angeles environment. And he is doing it with a composure and a maturity that players twice his age sometimes struggle to maintain. Let us talk about the spring training outings themselves for a moment, because the numbers matter and they tell an interesting story about where Yamamoto is in his preparation heading into this WBC and then the regular season. His first Cactus League outing against the Angels, 30 pitches, 1 2/3 innings. That is a deliberately conservative workload for a pitcher at this stage of spring, designed to get the arm firing and to get some competitive repetitions without accumulating significant physical stress. The number is low, the inning total is low, and the whole thing feels like exactly what it was: an introductory outing, a toe in the water, a first test of spring mechanics and stuff quality without any attempt to push toward a game intensity that the body is not yet ready for. The Giants' outing was a significant step up, 52 pitches over 3 innings. That is a meaningful increase in both total workload and inning depth, and it represents the kind of progression you want to see from a starting pitcher working toward WBC readiness. He gave up 3 runs, which is the kind of result that in late March would be cause for discussion, but in February, or the equivalent early spring context, is essentially irrelevant. Spring training outcomes do not matter. The data points that matter are pitch quality, mechanical consistency, stuff levels, and the overall physical feel of how the arm is responding to competitive use. And by all accounts from reporters who watched the Giants' outing, Yamamoto looked like himself. His stuff was there. His mechanics were clean. The 3 runs were the kind of spring training runs that happen when pitchers are working on specific things and are not yet in the compete-at-all-cost mode that regular season games require. He has another outing to go before he leaves for Japan, which is the information that surprised everyone when Yamamoto revealed it after the Giants game. That third appearance, unannounced, unscheduled in the public communication about his spring plan, apparently part of the parameters that had not been fully shared with the manager, is going to be his final tune-up before the WBC begins. It will presumably take him to somewhere between 65 and 75 pitches over 4 or maybe 5 innings if everything goes well, which would put him in a solid place physically for his first WBC start on March 6th. The progression from 30 pitches to 52 pitches to somewhere in the mid to high 60s is a reasonable and responsible ramp-up for a starting pitcher preparing for high-intensity competitive baseball. What does all of this mean for the Dodgers and their rotation plans heading into the 2026 season? Let us map it out, because the broader roster and schedule context makes the Yamamoto WBC situation simultaneously more manageable and more complicated than it might appear in isolation. Dave Roberts and the Dodgers have always known that losing Yamamoto for the WBC was a reality they needed to plan around. International tournaments are part of the modern baseball calendar, and when you have a roster that includes Shohei Ohtani, who has already departed for Japan himself to begin his WBC preparations, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, you are going to lose 2 of your most important players for a significant chunk of spring training. The organization has built its preparation around this reality, not against it. The Dodgers have extraordinary depth: Blake Snell, Roki Sasaki, Tyler Glasnow, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, River Ryan. This is a pitching staff that can function at an extremely high level, even without its 2 highest-profile members for a period of time. The regular season does not start until the WBC is over, and Yamamoto's projected return to full Dodgers activity after the tournament will still leave him with enough time to complete his spring preparation and be ready for opening day. The parameters that were agreed upon, keeping his WBC workload manageable, presumably limiting him to starts rather than bullpen appearances, building in rest requirements, are designed specifically to ensure that his return from Japan is as a fresh, healthy, fully capable starting pitcher rather than as an arm that has been overworked in a compressed competitive schedule. There is also the matter of Sasaki, who is in the same WBC situation from the opposite direction. Sasaki pitched for Japan in the previous WBC and was crucial to their championship run. His presence in the current rotation conversation for the Dodgers and his own WBC commitments add another layer to the organizational juggling act that Roberts and the front office are managing this spring. But again, the Dodgers have shown repeatedly that they are extraordinarily competent at managing exactly these kinds of complex, multivariable roster and schedule challenges. They have been here before. They know how to do this.